Alrighty, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a special live episode of the Bird's Nest podcast. My name is Joe Donahue. We are here today, and we're talking about free agency. We are 1 week through the free agency period. This is day 7 of official free agency. Began last week at 4 p.m. So we've been through, and here is just an opportunity that we can sort of take some time and wrap our heads around all of the news that has broken. The first week of free agency can sometimes be the craziest week of free agency to stay on top of, with all kinds of players leaving and going and coming, who's visiting, who's getting signed, who's getting released, you name it. And there's been quite a bit of that craziness here, even among the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles certainly had some challenges going into the free agency period this year. We had a large number of free agents, a large number of players who are or who were slated to leave this year. Still have a few that could go. Who are the Eagles going to allow to walk? Who are the Eagles going to bring in to replace them? You name it, that's where we're at. That's what we're talking about here today. So, wanted to take some time, break down what those moves all look like, and then from there, maybe talk about where things are looking and where things might need to be, where holes might need to get plugged, you name it. So, let's start with the list of the free agency moves here. So this, again, it can be challenging to stay on top of that. So I'm really grateful for the folks over at the Inquirer, Jeff McLean, Josh Tolentino, for their hard work as Eagles insiders, being able to compile all this. A lot of this information comes from the Inquirer, also comes from just having to stay on top of this as well myself. So we're going to start with who are the people that the Eagles are keeping, because that can sometimes be easier to understand. That can sometimes be easier to stay on top of here. So we have, these are extensions as well as some restructures. We did have one restructuring going into this. So we had Brandon Graham was the first piece of free agency, of real free agency news. He was the biggest free agent, one of the biggest free agency signings. He was the first one. And in fact, he was the first one this season, and in fact, he continues to be the longest tenured Eagles player over the course of the, or that's going to be on the roster. Remember, Brandon Graham was drafted back in the Andy Reid days. He was drafted in the 2010 NFL draft. So he signed a 1-year, $6 million deal. This is going to be a deal that's going to keep him around, going to keep him in that defensive end position and keep some solidity and continuity there. Especially as the Eagles start looking maybe at succession planning for him, as the Eagles start looking at, okay, who might fill his role in the coming year. This will buy them some time for that. So it's a $6 million deal for Brandon Graham. It's a 1-year deal. That'll be fine. The next piece of free agency news that broke was Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce announced during those early free agency legal tampering days that he was going to make the decision to come back for another year. And we all saw on Twitter how Howie Roseman and Jason Kelce celebrated that decision. Howie did a shot, and then they got right to work negotiating that contract. That contract is also a 1-year deal for Jason Kelce. He is another one of those really long-term players. He's been around for, he's not quite as long as Brandon Graham, but he's certainly been a staple on the team for the last more than a decade. So he signed another 1-year deal. He will still stay the top paid center in the league. His 1-year deal is worth $14.25 million. So that is, again, that's going to keep him around. The next piece of news that broke, again, we're focusing on current Eagles players that have either signed extensions or are restructuring. So the next piece of news was Boston Scott. Boston Scott at running back signed another one-year deal. This was a 1 year, $2 million deal. About 1.08 was guaranteed. So the rest of that's going to be bonuses and other things that can vary that he can earn. But it's 1 year, $1-year deal worth up to $2 million. It's going to be it's going to be big having him around. So he will join Kenny Gainwell most likely in his status, sort of like a cycling in and out running back kind of deal. It's most likely the Eagles are going to do a running back by committee kind of situation, especially as we look at who the Eagles are bringing in as well. We'll talk about that. Staying on the extensions, this was a big surprise. James Bradberry is sticking around. James Bradberry was expected to command a large contract on the free agency market. He was not expected to stay with the Eagles. He did. James Bradberry stays at cornerback. He signed a 3-year, $38 million deal. Of that $38 million, $20 million of that is guaranteed. Again, this is a big deal because it's really, really... James Bradberry was a really, really good player over the course of this year. Nobody even thought that Bradberry would be sticking around. He's certainly been a really, really good contributor. Yes, he is going to get a little bit older, but he was second-team honors on All-Pro. He logged 3 interceptions with 17 passes defended, and when he was targeted, he had a 51.6 passer rating, or the QBs had a 51.6 passer rating. So those are important numbers for him to stay on. Those are important numbers, and again, he's been a really good contributor. We all thought that he was going to be moving on, but he actually spoke about his extension, and he said that he went back to Philadelphia because of the familiarity with the coaching staff, because he loves the city, and he loves playing for the Eagles. And they also gave him a deal around what he was looking for. There were other teams that offered him more, but Philly fit him the best, in his opinion. He made those comments shortly after signing his extension. So we're really, really happy to have him. So and I'm sure Eagles fans will be giving him the love over the course of the next year. So James Bradberry signed that extension. Also signing an extension, again, we're looking, again, it's another long-tenured Philadelphia Eagle. Fletcher Cox signed a 1-year, $10 million extension, so he will stay on that defensive line that has been so strong over the course of the last several years. So he will stick around there. It's gonna be a pretty good one. Fletcher Cox's performance, especially as it pertains to the run, has deteriorated a little bit. His pass rush, his pass defense is still incredibly strong, so that's certainly not anything to be super concerned about. But it's just something to be aware of. He is definitely getting older. He's joining the Kelsey and the Graham eras. These 3 players, Fletch, Jason Kelsey, and Brandon Graham, are, as we've said before here on this channel, they are the last 3 players to have been drafted during the Andy Reid era. All 3 of them were drafted by the Eagles. All 3 of them were kept through their entirety. They've spent their entire careers here. So it's always good to have familiar faces and to have that sort of leadership in the locker room. That's probably a reason why Fletch was, or a big reason why Fletch was pursued over the course of the free agency period. We'll see what happens. Again, none of these players are getting any younger. And then certainly the last one. This one was probably one of the most wild rides. So much so that I posted a short or towards the end of last week that kind of contradicted what the news was. Because this was such a rapid fire turn of events here. Darius Slay signed a restructuring of his contract, so they extended his contract. So he's now got he originally was going to be a free agent at the end of this upcoming season. Instead, he signed a restructuring that was worth up to $42 million over 3 years. $23 million of that was guaranteed. What are you going to say about Darius Slay's situation here? Darius Slay was in talks about that restructuring for a number of years, or for a number of weeks here. He and his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who every time that you hear the name Drew Rosenhaus, sometimes, especially some of us longer tenured Eagles fans, think back to the days of Terrell Owens, and Drew Rosenhaus was Terrell Owens' agent at that time, and that was a whole nightmare. Darius Slay was initially and talked about a restructuring. There were reports that there was some question about what his worth was on the market, so he was given permission to seek a trade. There were reports also that the Eagles had contacted the Cowboys about trading Slay. Those talks did not come through at all or anything to that effect. Sorry, I've got a phone ringing over here, but nobody important. So Darius Slay went out, tested the trade market, but they were still trying to negotiate a contract and trying to negotiate a contract extension. At the end of the day, the Eagles really didn't. The Eagles and the Eagles and Slay's team really couldn't come to an agreement immediately. So what they decided to do was the Eagles decided to just release him. They were going to designate him as a post-June 1st release, which would have allowed them to transfer some of his cap hit over to the 24 season. And that kind of ruffled some feathers. And as soon as that news dropped, the Eagles never actually filed the paperwork to release him. So as soon as that news dropped, Slay and Rosenhaus came back to the table and they worked out a deal, and within 24 hours later, Slay was on a restructured contract, 3 years, $42 million, $23 million of that's guaranteed. It's that kind of stuff that can make free agency just spin a little bit. So those are your extensions and restructures. That's where we're at this point. Let's talk a little bit about the players that the Eagles are bringing in. So the players that the Eagles are bringing in, the first player, the newest player, was Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny's coming in from the Seattle Seahawks as a running back. This is a 1-year, $1.35 million prove-it deal. It's really just a deal to say, like, okay, are you legitimately good enough to be playing for us? Reason why is because Rashad Penny spent a significant portion of his tenure injured, and the Eagles want to make sure that he's going to be good enough before making any kind of a long-term investment in him. He is going to be a running back, so he will be supporting the Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, Rashad Penny now three-headed monster. And we'll see certainly what else is going to happen on that front there. We'll see whether or not he's still with the team. Again, it's a one-year contract worth less than $1.5 million. We'll see what winds up happening on that front there, because there's some other news surrounding that. surrounding that position that's going to be important. We'll touch on that after we get through the end of this here. Marcus Mariota coming in at quarterback. The Eagles signed Marcus Mariota to a 1-year deal worth $5 million. We finally did the deal. We alluded to that earlier this week. Marcus Mariota signed on that 1-year deal. We've been talking about getting him on the team since 2015 when he came up in the draft. That was, of course, during the Chip Kelly years. We all know how that panned out. But he's now going to be the backup to one of the best, or if not one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. If not in the NFL. It'll be big. So it'll be, and hopefully it's going to be a step up from Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew did not have some great performances while he was playing meaningful snaps, particularly when Hurts was down and out for the count late in the end of the season. And then this one. Greedy Williams is coming into the Eagles. This one is one that even slipped under my radar a little bit here. Forgot a little bit that Greedy's coming in. Greedy Williams is coming in to join the cornerback position. He's coming in from Cleveland. He signed a 1-year deal. That signing was made official this morning when he stopped by the NovaCare complex to sign the deal. He did swing by the media. We'll do some written content on that. But yeah, it was certainly good to see that Greedy came in. Again, he's going to be providing a little bit of depth at the cornerback position because, we've got James Bradbury, Darius Slay, Josh Jobe, Zach McPherson on the roster there, so he will be a fifth person. I would not be surprised if we didn't see some paring down of the corner position. But Greedy's coming in. So those are the new player signings. Again, at this point in time, it's not unexpected that the Eagles haven't made a huge splash in free agency. Certainly at this time last year, we had no idea that James Bradbury was going to be part of the team. But there are certainly developments that could occur. Yet at the same time, the Eagles did not have a ton of cap space this year, so it's understandable that there was not a ton of, okay, let's go out and sign all these players, because it would be a big challenge for them to do so. And again, remember, Jalen Hurts does have, looming kind of off to the side here, does have a contract extension that needs to be addressed. Jalen Hurts is due for a payday for his performance, and he has done quite enough to deserve that. So that is looming over here, off to the side, off on the side of the screen here. But right now, that thing that's looming over here is influencing what's happening right now with free agency, and why the Eagles aren't going out, and why the Eagles aren't signing a ton of new free agents, because they know that after this year, Jalen Hurts is not going to be on his rookie deal. So they don't want to go out and sign a lot of people to monster deals and then put themselves into cap hell. So that's also influencing a huge list of departures here. We have a large number of Eagles players who are leaving the team. Andre Dillard, a tackle, he is now going over to the Titans. He signed a 3-year, $29 million deal with them. TJ Edwards, a linebacker, is going over to the Bears. That's going to be a 3-year deal worth up to $19.5 million, with a little bit more than $12 million of that being guaranteed money. Marcus Epps is a safety. He's going over to the Raiders. 2 years, $12 million. $10.34 million of that's guaranteed. So that's one of the safety moves that broke fairly early in the free agency period. The next big one is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. We talked about that. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is going over to the Lions. That's a 1 year, $6.5 million prove-it deal. This is a move that certainly ruffled a lot of feathers, and at least for me, I'm disappointed that Gardner-Johnson is going to be going off to a different team. Gardner-Johnson was a strong performer here on the Eagles. He was a really, really big defensive player. Had a lot of contributions over the course of this season. It's just, so it is a little disappointing that he is leaving. It looks like what happened with that, there are some mixed reports, but the general consensus about what happened with that is that Gardner-Johnson and his agent asked for, or we're talking extensions. The offer that the Eagles came in with was less than what they were expecting, and less than what they were willing to work with. So what wound up happening was they decided, well, we're going to test out the free agency market. Unfortunately, when they tested out the free agency market, it was discovered that Gardner-Johnson is actually viewed as a bit of a risk in the NFL, whether it be due to his age or due to other things that are. It can vary when it comes to that front there. But yeah, the fact that Gardner-Johnson is now with the Lions, that's a direct correlation to that. Gardner-Johnson, he tested out the free agency market, didn't work, so he went back to the Eagles. And he asked the Eagles again for an extension. Came in at a much lower value, but by the time that he came back, the Eagles had already committed the money that was going to be committed to him to other needs. Again, it's disappointing. There were talks about whether or not the Eagles would use the franchise tag on him. The franchise tag would have been worth about $14 million, more than that, which is not something that the Eagles were going to be paying, according to guys like Reuben Frank and others who cover the team on a daily basis. So the franchise tag period came and went. Gardner-Johnson was not part of the franchise, or it was not included in the franchise tag, and that's what led to all of this happening. So he's now with the Lions. He's got a 1 year, $6.5 million prove-it deal with them. We'll see what happens. All the best to him. Hope he does well when he's not playing the Eagles, which I don't think they play the Eagles this year. But yeah, it's definitely disappointing to see a strong contributor to the defense like him, or to the defensive backfield like himself, leaving for another team. Javon Hargrave got himself a really big payday. Defensive tackle. He is now with the 49ers. Again, this broke fairly early in the free agency period, broke really more during the legal tampering period. He's now with the 49ers on a 4-year, $84 million contract. There's no chance the Eagles are going to pay him that much money, especially with the Jalen Hurts contract looming over here. $40 million of that is guaranteed. That is monster money, and again, he was a good player, but it's disappointing to see him leave. But at the same time, it's definitely understandable given the monster amount of a contract he drew. So that's that. This we all kind of anticipated was coming, especially as this was supplemented by the Marcus Mariota thing. This actually happened before the Marcus Mariota signing. But Gardner Minshew is going off to the Colts. He's going off to spend some time with Shane Steichen. It's a 1 year, $3.5 million deal. Probably going to be a backup to whoever they solidify as their franchise QB. Maybe he might get a year starting over there just to settle some things down. The Colts have had some real quarterback instability over the course of the last several years since Andrew Luck unexpectedly retired. Then they went and they got Carson Wentz, and then Carson Wentz totally bombed over there, and then. They've just had some quarterback instability there, so we'll see what happens with that. That's going to be one of Shane Steichen's priorities over there as the new head coach, is getting some stability in the quarterback domain. Gardner Minshew's over there. He's going to spend a year helping them out. Zach Pascal, wide receiver, is off to the Cardinals on a 2-year deal. We don't know more specifics than that. We just know that he's going off. Again, with the bringing in of Rashad Penny and the extension of Boston Scott, we kind of all saw this coming. Miles Sanders was allowed to walk by the team, so he went off and he signed a deal with the Panthers. It's a 4-year, $25.4 million contract. $13 million of that's guaranteed. Miles, it was great for you to be a part of the team over the course of the last 4 years. I mean, we drafted him, so it's big that we got him, and he was a really strong contributor over his tenure here. Thanks for all the support, and certainly best of luck to him as he goes. Again, there are a lot of really good players on this free agency list that are taking a walk here. Isaac Seumalo, guard, is going over to the Steelers on a 3-year, $24 million contract. He's just moving down the Pennsylvania Turnpike farther west. So again, there's some that creates a hole over at the guard area. What is most likely going to happen because of that is Cam Jurgens, who is the heir apparent to Jason Kelce at center, is probably going to swoop in and play right guard to allow for that to allow for there to be a really solid front line. Because again, with the Jason Kelce extension, nobody is really changed there. And Cam Jurgens was already part of the team. Last season, he was backing up the offensive line. So it's good for him to be a part of this. Good for him to be able to get some starting experience. Again, it's most likely going to be he's going to be swooping in and filling in that guard position there. So we will see what happens there. But with Mailata, Dickerson, Kelce, Jurgens, and Johnson, still going to be a pretty stacked offensive line. The Eagles are pretty well set there. And then Kaiser White is off. He's a linebacker. He is off to the Cardinals on a 2-year, $10 million contract. $6 million of that's guaranteed. So those are the things that have happened, the personnel moves that have been made, whether it be Eagles coming in, Eagles sticking around, Eagles leaving. I mean, those are the things that are that's where things have happened. We are still watching a few players. There are still a few players that are free agents for the Eagles that have not committed anywhere yet. These are they are all unrestricted free agents. We've got Linval Joseph over at defensive tackle. We're still waiting to hear what's going to happen with him. Brett Kern over at punter. He's one that we would probably want to see go. He was not great. He was not great at the punter position. In the special teams, that really that left a lot to be desired in the 2022 season when Aaron Siposs went down for the stretch that he did. Kern stepped in, and Kern was nothing to write home about, and that's putting it very nicely. Robert Quinn over at defensive end. He is somebody that we're waiting on, and Ndamukong Suh is also somebody that we're waiting on at this point. So, with that, let's take a look at this depth chart here. So, this was a depth chart. The Eagles put this together. I wrote in some notes here, just that way we can see where things are. Any references to starting or backups are as of February 12th. So we will see what winds up happening on in there. So wide receivers, with Zach Pascal going, A.J. Brown is... we've got the wide receiver core being A.J. Brown, Quez Watkins, Britton Covey, Devontae Smith. The Eagles also have Devin Allen on the practice squad. He was signed to a futures contract. It is likely that Allen will see some playing time and will probably get a backup spot on the 52-man roster. The Eagles could also go out and draft somebody. I would not be keen on who are on the drafting portion of this. The Eagles have not tended to draft well wide receiver-wise. Offensive line, again, we went through Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelce, Cam Jurgens, Lane Johnson. Those would be the front five. The downside is that with the departure of Andre Dillard and Isaac Seumalo, there are no backups there, at least according to the depth chart. That is a problem, and we need to add some depth there. That's likely going to be something that's going to be addressed through the draft. I do not anticipate the Eagles going out and picking somebody. I do not anticipate the Eagles going out, picking somebody up off of the free agency market. That's just not, I don't see that. I see the Eagles are going to probably go in to the draft. There's plenty of offensive linemen in this draft that the Eagles could snag, one or two, just to get them on, get them ready. Because, again, there's some aging players on this team on that front five. Jason Kelce, certainly, as I indicated, he's one of the longest tenured players. He is one of the last three from the Andy Reid era. Lane Johnson was drafted in the first year of the Chip Kelly era. So Lane Johnson was drafted not all that long after these guys. So it's somebody like him, his absence is noticed. Yeah. So, again, we, at least according to the official depth chart here, it is not, or there's some holes in the depth there, and that's going to be something that's going to need to get filled. It is likely that there could be some support coming in on that front there. Or some notes here on that offensive line. Jack Driscoll and Sua Opeta, they are still around, so they're not listed on the official depth chart, likely because of injuries that they sustained or practice squad related things. But those guys could earn some upcoming roster spots. Again, I also see the Eagles going out and drafting some folks because again, there are guys on this team that are not getting younger. So that would be the name on that front there. Tight end, we've got Dallas Goedert, Jack Stoll, and Grant Calcaterra. Of those three, Dallas Goedert continues to do exceptionally well. Grant Calcaterra was a good stand-in for Goedert. Jack Stoll could also do well. We will see how all that pans out there, but I'm looking forward to seeing that. We already touched on wide receiver. Running back, we got Rashad Penny, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell on the depth chart here. And then certainly over at quarterback, the quarterback lineup is going to be Jalen Hurts, backup Marcus Mariota, third stringer would be Ian Book. It is, again, not going to be likely that Ian's going to see a ton of playing time. He's around. Hopefully we don't get into a Brock Purdy kind of situation with him, but the Eagles, at least at quarterback, have a monstrous advantage over anybody else there. So, yeah. And as I'm looking at this, too, I'm also thinking, maybe Kenny Gainwell becomes the number one running back. We'll talk about that because there is one piece of running back news. Actually, no, we'll talk about that now. This was something that broke within the last 24 hours. Bijan Johnson, who is a top running back draft prospect in the NFL, flew into Philadelphia and is meeting with the team today. He has met with the team today. This is huge. This could be the first indication of what are the Eagles going to do with their two first round picks. We'll see. We'll see what happens. On the defensive side of the football, the front four on the defensive side would be Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat. We do not know what is happening at this point with Linval Joseph or Ndamukong Suh. Those two could stick around. It's probably going to be more likely that they walk. And so that would leave Jordan Davis and Milton Williams to fill in at the defensive tackle position, along with Robert Quinn to back up defensive end. Would like to see a little bit more depth there. So Jordan Davis could likely slide into the defensive tackle, or Milton Williams to work alongside Fletcher Cox. We'll see what the Eagles decide to do there. I also see the Eagles going and filling in some of this in the draft. The linebackers. We've got a number of linebackers here. We got Hassan Reddick, Patrick Johnson, Kyron Johnson over there. They are the strong outside linebackers, the Sam linebackers. The middle linebackers, we've got Nakobe Dean and Christian Ellis. So we've got those guys there. Again, also the Eagles. This actually was a little bit late to fitting in on my list here. I totally forgot about these two moves here. So Justin Evans, as well as Nicholas Moreau. Nicholas Moreau is coming in. He has agreed to terms with the Eagles. This happened not all that long earlier today before we went live. Nicholas Moreau has agreed to terms with the Eagles, and Justin Evans has also signed with the Eagles as well. Those guys. It is huge that they are joining this team. Justin Evans comes to the Eagles from New Orleans. he is going to be a safety. He's going to fill the hole that was left by Gardner Johnson. And then Moreau, again, is a linebacker. He's coming in from Chicago. Two pretty good signings from teams that at least one of those two teams had a decent defense. The other, not so much. The Chicago Bears specifically, were not good. But Justin Evans was. Justin Evans was part of a decent defense. Not a decent pass defense, but definitely a decent rush defense. So those guys will come in. Let me add that to my list here. Okay, so linebackers, the outside guys are going to be Hassan Reddick, Patrick Johnson, and Kyron Johnson. Middle guys would be Nakobe Dean and Christian Ellis. The weak inside linebackers, most likely you would find Moreau there, assuming roster changes don't happen, which they certainly very well could. So we'll see what winds up happening on that front there. But Moreau joins the roster of folks on the linebacker end, provides a little bit more depth on that front as well. Cornerback were pretty well stacked. We got James Bradbury, Josh Jobe, Greedy Williams, Darius Slay, Zach McPherson. It's going to be a pretty full cornerback roster. I would not be surprised if the Eagles release at least one of those or trade one of them, maybe for some more draft picks or something. I do not see them parting. Certainly, I don't see them parting ways with Bradbury or Slay. Josh Jobe, Zach McPherson, maybe. We're not 100% sure on that front. But I think the cornerback position has some significant depth there. Also in the defensive backfield, also a corner, I guess, Avonte Maddox and Josiah Scott. So they also fit in there. And then over at safety, we've got Kayvon Wallace, Reed Blankenship, and Justin Evans. Again, all reports are that Justin Evans, particularly, was a depth signing, and the Eagles aren't done there. And that makes sense because the Eagles lost two of their safeties, not just one. So it's not just a Gardner Johnson being swapped out for Justin Evans deal. We've also got to figure out what's happening with Marcus Epps, or with the hole that's left by him. That, again, was a move that it created holes. So it's good to see that there have been some opportunity to plug those holes. Again, Aaron Siposs, Brett Kern, we're kind of anticipating Kern's going to walk on special teams. So we've got Siposs at punter, Jake Elliott at kicker. Jake Elliott, I would not be surprised if we see him around for a long time. Rick Lovato as the long snapper. Punt return specialist is Britton Covey and Devontae Smith. Kick return specialists are Boston Scott, Britton Covey, and Quiz Watkins. That's it. That's where we're at. We've got all of the roster moves kind of covered for you. So again, players that are joining the team, we've got Rashad Penny, Marcus Mariota, Greedy Williams, Justin Evans, and Nicholas Moreau. Those are new player signings. Extensions and restructures, we've got Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey, Boston Scott, James Bradbury, Fletcher Cox, and Darius Slay. Again, Darius Slay is the only real restructure of that. Everybody else, it was contract extensions. And then departures, Andre Dillard, TJ Edwards, Marcus Epps, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Javon Hargrave, Gardner Minshew, Zach Pascal, Miles Sanders, Isaac Seumalo, and Kaiser White. Thanks so much for joining us here at Bird's Nest Media. Please feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. You can also visit our website, birdsnestmedia.com. That all of our YouTube streams, podcast episodes, etc., as well as written articles are going to be found there. Check us out on social media, Bird's Nest Media on Facebook, Bird's Nest FB on Twitter. Keep us, feel free to like and subscribe. You can join our Patreon if you really like it and you want to subscribe and give me money to help do this. But certainly, again, any support that you're able to offer, even by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, sharing it with folks, visiting the website, really helps. So again, thank you so much for watching and for tuning in. I'm Joe Donahue. This has been the Bird's Nest Podcast. Let's go Eagles.